Tama po ba na yung nakita po kasi natin sa news yung whole administrator. So right now, it's not in effect. Just to be clear for the body and the public that hindi pa administrator, Mr. Chair, yung pag-a-appoint po.
Yes. Well, as expressed by Attorney Ambrosio, who was under oath, that he is not yet the administrator as we speak, and it is contingent to anything that may happen to Mr. Jacobo.
Mr. Chair, if we could just have a copy of that also so that the committee will have a copy of whatever would happen since yung executive pastor naman nandito
Yes.
and there's an appointment pending. If we could have a copy of the document for
Yes.
the said appointment, Mr. Chair.
Attorney Ambrosio.
Your Honor, we will submit.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, to SEC lang for the clarification of this process. Ano po ba ang proseso ng pag-appoint ng administrator pagdating sa corporation sole? Since it's a different kind of corporation, it's a special kind of corporation na ang executive pastor lang naman ang mag-a-administer ng mga properties and manage for on behalf of the members of the religious sect, Mr. Chair.
That's addressed to
The SEC.
SEC. You may reply.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. To address the question of Honorable Nograles, when an entity incorporates in the SEC as a corporation sole, in the articles of incorporation, they will already specify who is the executive pastor or the elder or the rabbi or the chief of that corporation sole. That's all.
Mr. Chair, with regard to appointing of an administrator, should the executive pastor be incapacitated, what is the process po, Mr. Chair?
Per our record, with regard to KOGC, on December 16, 2022,
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm just asking for a general process, not with relation to the KOJC, Mr. Chair.
a letter of appointment will be issued by the current executive pastor to his successor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to remind, since we're talking about the laws and the corporation code, given the gravity of what is happening with the media and everything, with regard to Section 111 also of the revised corporation code, para lang umiwas po sa mga violations, Mr. Chair, in any encumbrance, selling, disposal of property by an administrator or executive pastor, kailangan po rin po ng court approval dito with regard to that. And I'm just more appealing na sana sumunod po ang KOJC, ang Suarasog, or especially KOJC, sa mga ganitong aspeto so that we won't be looking into further violations. And should there be any change, again, with the consent also of Congress. Yun lang po, Mr. Chair, just to raise it as a way of reminding lang po the corporations on their procedural aspects para iwas na po sa mga violations na pwedeng mangyari po, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Migs Nograles, SEC, please take note of the statement of the Honorable Migs Nograles. Thank you. Thank you. So, any other member that would like to speak for or against this measure? You have now the Honorable Gutierrez.
Yes, Mr. Chair, sorry, before we proceed po, just a few questions. Like I mentioned, we had some material questions that were left unanswered in the previous deliberations, and we'd like to take a crack at the theory of the good attorney Topacio that they might be able to answer po. So with the indulgence of this committee, may I proceed with my interpellation of the executive pastor?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may I request that perhaps is the attorney Ambrosio capable of translating for Pastor Jacobo? Yes? Okay, Mr. Chair. So that to keep it po within KOJC, while we no doubt appreciate the interpretation skills of the good attorney Tolentino, we would like to have a separate po, para we're not confused where KOJC ends and where SMNI begins. So So, Mr. Chair, may I ask the good Pastor Jacobo, through the good Attorney Ambrosio, in your GIS papers, maybe begin, how long have you been with the KOJC?
Your Honor, nagsugod ko sa pakiguban kong pastor since 1985.
Your Honor, nagsimula po ako since 1985. Ipagsama kay Pastor since 1985.
Mr. Chair, I noticed the good pastor does not need a translator to understand my question. But,
Nakasabot ko,
okay.
okay, Your Honor.
You understand.
Gusto
You
lang
cannot
akong
express.
ma-express
I
ang
see.
akong gustong isulti.
You would prefer not to express in another language, or you are unable of expressing in another language?
Mas prefer ko nga musulti og Bisaya, Your Honor.
He prefers to answer in Cebuano, or
It is a
Bisaya.
preference. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the record. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask the good pastor, no? So, since 1985, but his appointment as executive pastor was on what date specifically?
Nagsugod ang ako ang pagkahimong executive pastor, Your Honor. At tong time nga gipil upan na nako ang mga papers para sa Securities Exchange and Commission.
Nagsimula akong maging executive pastor nung pinirmahan ko yung mga papers for the Securities and Exchange Commission.
That was December 19, 2022. O pagka sunod na tuig, January 4, 2023, giaprobahan sa SEC ang pagkahimo na kong executive pastor.
It started in December 19, 2022, and on January 4, 2023, it was approved by SEC. Your Honor, may I make a clarification? So, what Pastor Marlon is pertaining to is the amended articles of incorporation, since corporation souls are not required to submit general information sheets.
Okay, so we're now referring to the KOJC, Mr. Chair. But for the appointment, because, by the way, thank you, Pastor, for attending today, no? We would have hoped that you were with us from the start. But we were under the impression, I believe it was one of the representatives of SMNI, that Pastor Jacobo took over in 2021. How can we...
2020.
2021 daw po yung naalala.
2022, Your Honor.
2022, nag-take
Yeah.
over. So the mentioned appointment papers by Attorney Tolentino was based on what? May we ask, Mr. Chair, the representative of SMNI?
Your statement, well, his statement was 2021.
If I'm not mistaken, of course, I
I
could be wrong.
have
but-
with me, Mr. Chair, the certificate of appointment of Brother Marlon B. Jacobo, signed by Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy, dated December 19 of 2022.
Mr. Chair, may we ask the Comsec? Yes. If I recall correctly, the previous hearings, it was alleged that it was sometime in 2021. May we check with the records of the, may we ask the committee to provide for the records of with the appointment papers? But probably after na lang po, no? Because there seems to be this was very distinct to me.
I think, Mr. Chair, I have to clarify. I was talking about SMN, the participation of Pastor Apollo Kibuloy with respect to Suarasug Media Corporation. Because Pastor Apollo Kibuloy was still a stockholder since in 2019, but in 2020 he is not anymore. In 2020, is still is a stockholder of Suarasug Media Corporation. In 2021, he's also a stockholder of Suarasug Media Corporation. But in 2022, he already donated his share to Jesus Christ Workers Members Cooperative, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, sorry, just
That's
to
why, Mr.
clarify.
Chair, I submitted our position paper today, Mr. Chair, to give emphasis to our stand, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, we would have appreciated siguro po yung position paper weeks or days ago so that we can properly understand. The position paper submitted today and the hearing today, of course, we cannot consider whatever the contents are, but rest assured that we will be studying that after
thank
today
you.
po. No? So, Mr. Chair, so to clarify lang po, no? So, according to Executive Pastor, the appointment in GIS papers for KOJC 2022 po. The appointment letter, can we have a reading again of the appointment, Mr. Chair?
Okay, Mr. Chair. The certificate of appointment of the executive pastor of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ, dated December 19, 2022 at KJC Compound, Phil Japan, Friendship Highway, Sasa, Davao City, signed by Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy to Brother Marlon B. Jacobo, Mr. Chair. Akobo.
For KOJC.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So we have to clear with our records for what stood out distinctly was the representation by representatives of FSMNI that there was a transfer in 2021. Because I remember this particular, Mr. Chair, because we were discussing in GIS. Because
The GS, Mr. Chair, refers to the Swarsug Media
Yes,
Corporation,
for
not to the
Swarsug.
Kingdom of Jesus Christ.
yes, Mr. Chair. So yun po, kasi what's particular to me, Mr. Chair, okay, first and foremost, we'd like to reiterate that the existence of KJC as sole, a corporation sole, is still under question as per the interpellation of the Honorable Nograles, as affirmed by the SEC that there were questions as to the two-thirds voting. So we still have yet to receive a report from the SEC on that matter. But that's just to put it on record po, no, on question pa. But assuming that we will now proceed with the rules, supposedly, na ito ay corporation sole, Mr. Chair, our question with SMNI is that for September 2020, yun po yung submission ng GIS, and then April 2021, yung GIS, nandun pa rin po si Pastor Kibuloy. And it was both as stockholder and beneficial owner. I would assume that the beneficial ownership of Pastor Kibuloy does not come from his ownership of stocks, but of his influence and control of the corporation, as is per the rules of the SEC. But in the GIS of 2022 as of June submitted, and 2023 as of May, he was no longer stockholder, neither was he beneficial owner, which would make sense for the appointment in December 2022. However, the GIS was submitted June 2022. So on the papers pa lang po ng GIS, wala na po si Pastor Kibuloy. But the appointment was made in December. So how do we explain this incongruency, Mr. Chair?
Pwede ko muhatag og brief history nga nung nahimo kong executive pastor.
Can I give a brief history on how I became the executive pastor?
Okay.
I will allow that, pero kailangan ho masagot yung tanong, ha?
Oh,
Bakit ho, iba yung sa dokumento, iba yung kinikwento nyo na yun?
ganito po, inanib ni Your Honor, ang plano ni Pastor na ibiyaan na niya ang iyang pagka-executive pastor.
Ang plano ni pastor na umalis na sa pagka-executive pastor,
Nag-start ito 2015 pa po.
Okay.
And then, the following year, 2014, tungod kay pagka 2015 na ami general meeting kauban sa tanang mga international o national leaders.
in 2015, we had a meeting with the leaders of KOJC.
Gi-announce na ni Pastor na iya ng biyaan ang iyahang pagka-executive pastor.
Pastor Apollo already announced that he will leave his position as the executive pastor.
Ug iya na ning itugyan sa mga board of administrators.
And he will entrust this to the administrators.
Mr. Chair, very quick.
2019, padayon sa, Your Honor, pwede kong padayon? Okay. 2019, giingnan ako ni Pastor na ako sa succession plan sa Kingdom of Jesus Christ. 2019, naan ako sa succession plan na ako ang musunod sa iya.
In 2019, I was already in the succession plan.
Na-formalize ni Your Honor, niadtong ni pirma ko sa tanang mga legal documents para sa SEC December 19, 2022.
So, yan po inyong intention pa rin 2016 kayo na. O bakit hindi ho kayo 2016 o sa 2019 binigyan ng kayo na sa mga dokumento? Bakit ho sa December, sa 2023 pa? pumasok po ang pangalan ninyo. 2020, no?
Your Honor, tungod kaya ng panahon na ako sa abroad, ang akong assignment nasa abroad, na ako sa Middle East, na-assign, o sa Tibok, Africa.
So, okay. So, okay.
Tapos na ako yung pandemic.
Opo. Klaro po tayo dyan. So, ang hindi pa rin ho natin nasagot, yung tanong ho ni bakit nagre-reflect pa rin sa SEC documents na yung pangalan po ni Pastor Kibuloy nung sinasabi nyo kayo na. Ngayon sinasabi nyo nasa abroad kayo, nasa hindi pa formal.
Your Honor, may we
Attorney.
ask the question to be repeated so that
Attorney,
it's clear
I-
on our part?
There's a inconsistency. I think the question, can you please just answer the question of the Honorable Gutierrez? Why does it reflect that it's still Pastor Kibuloy when he's now saying that it's not anymore Pastor Kibuloy?
Your Honor, if you are pertaining to the general information sheet of Suarasug
Yes.
in 2022, it was filed on June 2022. Therefore, Pastor was still the executive pastor at that time. However, he is no longer a stockholder. He is no longer the stockholder of Suarasug because he donated his shares to Jesus Christ Workers Members Cooperative.
When?
On GIS for June 27, 2022. And the appointment of Pastor Jacobo happened on December 19, 2022.
Correct.
So-
But for the record purposes, there's no show of the transfer because the GIS still shows that this is a Pastor Kibuloy.
Yes, Your Honor. In fact, the amended articles was released or approved by SEC on January 4, 2023.
Correct. So that's what we have on record also. So it still doesn't answer why is it the name of Pastor Kibuloy still there when in SEC it's so as far as we're concerned for the entire year of January of 2022 it was Pastor Kibuloy.
For the entire year 2022, Your Honor, it was only on December 19 that the appointment of Pastor Apollo was provided or decided by the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a point of order po,
Honorable
no? I don't know
Gutierrez.
if we have it in the rules. I'm sorry if I must drive down at this point, no? Mr. Chair, the executive pastor was assigned abroad po, no? Perhaps we would appeal again that perhaps he would choose to express himself. I'm sure he's very capable in English. Because, Mr. Chair, for when the testimony, when the we invite our resource persons to ferret out the truth, as the SJJ said. When it is being courts through a colleague and an attorney at that, who has been also inputting her own answers in not as translation, nalilito po tayo kung which were the words of pastor and which are the words of the attorney. Mr. Chair, he did say it was only a preference. Perhaps he would consider expressing himself in a language understood by us all here.
Your Honor, no, gustuhon man ako, pero mas ma-express magud nako ang akong isulti kung akong gamito ng akong pinulungan. Ay, hinaot nga,
Mr. Chair, with the kind volunteerism of Congresswoman Garin, she has offered to translate for us, no?
Attorney Mark, you might want to translate first.
Mr. Chair,
Because it was stated,
ay,
I don't think she was listening. Yeah, Attorney Mark, kayo muna.
Ay gustuhin man niya magsalita ng Tagalog but he cannot express na anong komportable sa kanya.
So, Mr. Chair, whether or not we would accept, comfort or preference, luckily, the Honorable Garin has offered. This might be new for the committee
Thank you.
po, no?
Yes.
But if we would accept that as our procedure going on, no? Parang we can separate rin yung testimony ni Attorney Ambrosio.
Yes.
Kasi kanina po, may translation sana for Pastor Jacobo, pero may input naman sa GIS si Attorney Ambrosio, just to separate the two.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the other members of the committee, the Honorable Jojo Lara, who's here. Welcome, sir, of the 3rd District of Cagayan, and of course, the Honorable Janet Garin, 1st District, Iloilo. Meron po kayong sasabihin before the Honorable Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, and proceeding now back now with that procedural question done. Yung tanong po natin dito is because there seems to be a disconnect between the GIS of the SMNI with the appointment of Executive Pastor Jacobo and the internal workings of KOJC. Kasi po, okay, admittedly, let us say in 2019, there were informal plans to have Executive Pastor Jacobo take over, and that this only took effect in December 2022. It does not explain for the change of the GIS in June 2022. Kasi po dito, natanggal na si Pastor Jacobo, and still, another factor, we will ask, natanggal na po dito si Pastor Kibuloy, but still, Pastor Jacobo was not inputted there. Kaya nga po yung tanong namin sa SEC, which they said, wala naman pong beneficial ownership portion in the documents received by SEC. So that's another issue that we have po, no? Just to recall, para sa lahat sa atin dito, there is a difference in the GIS submitted before this committee and the GIS submitted before the SEC. So the SEC could not also clarify kung ano po yung beneficial ownership. So going back po, no? Though there were plans for Executive Pastor Jacobo to take over in 2019, and this only took effect in December 2022, it does not explain kung bakit wala na po si Pastor Kibuloy in June of 2022, unless the GIS was already reflecting changes without the proper appointment papers. Mr. Chair, maybe ask the explanation from the good pastor.
Actually, kana nga issue, Your Honor, naamong ko na sa, di ba, sa SMNI, ang GIS, kana nga panahon, siya pa ang executive pastor.
Okay, the Honorable Garin, you may want to translate.
In English or Tagalog. During the time, he was still the executive director. He was still the
Executive
pastor.
Sa pag-submit, ma'am, Your Honor,
When it was submitted,
June, sa GIS, June 27, 2022, si Pastor Apollo Kibuloy, siya pa ang executive pastor.
so when it was submitted, June 27, 2022, Pastor Kibuloy was still the executive pastor.
Opo.
Mr. Chair, then why was he not beneficial owner in June 2022?
Nga nung wa man siya na beneficial owner sa 2022.
Yes, Attorney Ambrosio.
Okay, so, Your Honor, Pastor Apollo was not included in the 2022 GIS of Suarasug because he does not control the operations of Suarasug, and at the same time, it was the period wherein KOJC, the executive pastor, would want not to involve itself in commercial transactions. So that's why during this period, all control was given to Suarasug because they have their own board of directors. So that's the reason, Your Honor.
Mr. Chair, of course, we'll have to accept that as the reasoning, but it is highly suspect because for the years 2022 and 2023, KJC still had 53.4% ownership, not including the indirect ownership they had through Phoebus, which had 46.2%. So if the reasoning is to divest, I think that would have done through the stockholders. Now, Mr. Chair, the question here, and if that were the case, is it not his being beneficial ownership of 2020 and 2021, in which he was still there, was because he was executive pastor. Therefore, it follows, in 2022, when he was still executive pastor, he still should have been beneficial owner, and not only that, after 2022, Executive Pastor Jacobo is nowhere to be found in the beneficial ownerships as Executive Pastor for 2022 or 2023. So, Mr. Chair, this only supports what we have been inclined to believe, that there is confusion in the papers being submitted before this committee under Section 12 on reportorial requirements, made worse by the fact that the document submitted here is different from the document submitted with the SEC. So it brings to focus again, Mr. Chair, the issue of whether SMNI, this is no longer KOJC, SMNI is faithfully fulfilling its obligation and duties under the franchise, a privilege granted to it by this body, by this August Hall. So, Mr. Chair, one question. We'll move on from the GIS portion now. I have a question on Section 4 and 7. Recently, we've come to the knowledge that one of your star talents, independent contractors, was found guilty of indirect contempt. Mr. Chair, may we find out from SMNI if there has been any action on their ethics board ba yun, or remedial board, disciplinary board?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask, what is the, who is the talent? Is
Mr. Chair, it's Ms. Badoy.
Miss Badoy and Eric Celis, they have their program kasama Laban Kasama ang Bayan is no longer is suspended as of today, Mr. Chair.
As of today?
No, since February, Mr. Chair.
Since February, Mr. Chair. So, because...
You can check that
So,
through our
the
social,
records,
even
Mr.
our
Chair.
social media, Mr. Chair. We have no more Laban Kasamang Bayan on in our social media, and including but of course there is Laban Kasamang Bayan in rally in Liwasan ng Bonifacio.
Same name, no relation.
No relation. Mr.
No
Chair.
relation. It's a branding thing, no,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. Okay. So, Mr. Chair, starting February, wala na po yung Laban Kasama ang Bayan.
Suspended. Mr. Chair.
Suspended, kahit sa social media.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Our independent contractors are in no way now working with SMNI.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, yun lang, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that answer. Going back po, no, so just to summarize, because I have now concluded my questioning here, for the consideration of this body, the violations that we have found are on Sections 4 on responsibility to the public and Section 7 for self-regulation in relation to the numerous allegations, indictments, or findings of fake news, red tagging. We're also citing Section 10 on the provisions for sale, lease, transfer of ownership. On Section 11 for dispersal of ownership requirement. Section 10 and Section 11 carry with them ipso facto provisions for their revocation. And Section 12, which was just highlighted today, all the more because we could not get the proper answer on the repertory requirement. So I submit to this body, Mr. Chair, and I request that we consider my bill that is pending before the body. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Gutierrez.
Can we recognize Mr. Chair?
The Honorable Mark Tolentino.
Attorney Mark Tolentino, Mr. Chair, all the questions of the good Congressman Gutierrez is already answered, Mr. Chair, in our position paper. Can I explain in details, Mr. Chair, by reading our position paper, Mr. Chair?
Attorney Mark, since you've stated earlier that that is just a summary of all previous statements that you have made, which is still before already with the committee, then we have that already on record.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So I don't think you still need more time to express what you have already stated in the previously. But just be rest assured that as far as the Honorable Gutierrez is concerned, it has been remained unanswered, and he's still in the state of confusion as far as your answers are concerned. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Any other member? The Honorable Pacho, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, even surprised, kasi Pastor Jacobo was appointed by Pastor Kibuloy as trustee. Mr. Executive Pastor. Di po ba nakapagtataka, he cannot express himself in English, in Tagalog. Pero siya po yung chosen one. Ano po very special characteristic o special kay Pastor Jacobo?
Ma'am, it's a management prerogative na ni pastor na siya ang mupili kinsa ang gustong mupuli sa iya ha, whether makasulti og English o dili.
So it's
That is
Pastor
the-
Kibuloy's prerogative based on management skills, not dependent on the mastery or the art of speaking either in Tagalog or English.
Thank you po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am.
Proceed. Po. Okay, so are there any other questions for or against this